Today, we're tackling something, well, pretty mind-bending. We're exploring this radical idea that maybe the universe, our minds, even our bodies, aren't separate things at all, but function more like a giant hologram. It really challenges everything we think we know from standard science.
It absolutely does. And for this deep dive, we're leaning heavily on Michael Talbot's book from '91, The Holographic Universe. He did an amazing job synthesizing work from physicist David Bohm and neuroscientist Carl Pribram.
Right.
And yeah, the target here is that standard Western science model, the Newtonian Cartesian one that assumes everything's separate, located somewhere. Our sources basically say that model's broken.
Okay, so that's the mission then. Figure out why the common sense view of reality,
Right.
where my keys are right here on the table, just doesn't hold up under scrutiny. We want that aha moment.
Exactly. Where does it break down? Physics, psychology, healing. It seems to pop up everywhere once you start looking.
All right, let's jump in. We probably have to start where Bohm did, right?
Yeah.
In the really weird world of quantum physics.
Definitely.
For ages, we pictured atoms and electrons like tiny marbles, little objects. But what physicists actually found was, well, stranger.
Much stranger. The really startling thing is that subatomic particles, like electrons, they just don't have the properties of objects as we know them.
What do we know properties?
Well, like dimension, you literally can't measure the width of an electron. It's not zero. It just doesn't have a width in the way a marble does. It's not a tiny dot whizzing around.
So if it's not an object, what is it?
That's the million-dollar question. It shows this bizarre particle-wave duality. If you hit it against a screen, bam, it acts like a particle, a single point.
Okay.
But let it travel freely, and it acts like a wave, like a spreading cloud of energy. And the craziest part, in experiments like the double slit, it behaves like it goes through both slits at the same time.
Both slits. As a
Wave, yeah. It creates interference patterns on the other side, like ripples in water crossing each other. You can't say where it is until you force it to show up somewhere by measuring it.
And this shape-shifting, it applies to everything at that level.
Yeah.
Particles, light, X-rays.
It's the rule down there, not the exception. And that impossibility, how can something be everywhere and nowhere yet connected? That's what led Bohm to propose something deeper.
The implicate order.
Exactly. Bohm said the universe must be non-local at its core. There's this hidden and folded level of the implicate order where everything is fundamentally interconnected. And our world, the one we see and touch, that's the explicate order. It's like an unfolded projection, maybe even a hologram, generated from that deeper reality. The electron isn't magically connected across the room.
It was never really separate to begin with.
Precisely. It's all part of the same underlying fabric.
Okay, wow. So if the whole cosmos is structured like a hologram where every part reflects the whole, what does that mean for us? For our minds? This has huge implications for psychology, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It offers a whole new way to think about things observed in therapy. Take the concept of resonance that Levinson talked about in psychoanalysis.
Resonance?
Yeah. Levinson noticed that patients seem to get better, to change, almost regardless of the specific therapeutic school the therapist followed, Freudian, Jungian, whatever. He started to think the actual technique wasn't the active ingredient.
Yeah, and he thought the technique was just ceremonial? That sounds pretty controversial. Dismissing all those different methods.
It is a strong claim, yeah.
Yeah.
But Levinson argued the real driver of change was this resonance, this deep connection between therapist and patient. When that clicks, it allows this huge three-dimensional, spatially coded representation of the patient's experience to emerge, basically a hologram of their inner world. The therapy technique is just the ritual that helps access and maybe shift that pattern.
So the underlying holographic structure is kind of bubbling up in the therapy room, generating this deep pattern of the person.
That's the idea. And it connects to why our beliefs and attitudes can be so incredibly hard to change. David Schoenberg, using Bohm's physics, talked about thoughts being like vortices.
Vortices, like whirlpools.
Exactly. Not just metaphorically, but almost literally. Think about the Great Red Spot on Jupiter.
Okay, the giant storm.
Right. It's this massive vortex, 25,000 miles wide, and it's been stable for, 300 years?
Wow.
Schoenberg suggested our strongly held beliefs, political views, old traumas, deep biases are like that. There's stable energy patterns in our consciousness, structured to maintain themselves and actively resist anything new that conflicts with them.
So arguing with someone about a core belief is like trying to argue with a hurricane. It's physically built to push back.
Kinda, yeah. It's a self-sustaining pattern. Now, this pattern, this idea that the part reflects the whole, It doesn't stop with the mind. It seems to extend right into the body.
How so?
Researchers like Olison and Dale talked about microacupuncture holograms.
Microacupuncture. Okay, how do you get from electrons to acupuncture?
Oh, the theory is, just like any piece of a hologram contains the whole picture, maybe every small part of the body contains a map or an image of the entire body. The most studied example is the ear. Apparently, the ear contains a kind of miniature upside-down human shape, a holographic reiteration, they called it.
That sounds pretty far-fetched. Is there actual data on that?
Surprisingly, yes. There were studies where acupuncturists diagnosed patients just by looking at their ears without any other information, blind diagnoses.
Yeah.
They agreed with the established medical diagnoses over 75% of the time. 75.2%, I think it was, which is pretty remarkable for just looking at an ear.
75%.
Yeah.
Okay, that's significant.
And there are anecdotes, too. Olison himself apparently saw this weird, flaky patch of skin on someone's ear in the spot corresponding to the heart. He suggested they get it checked out.
Yeah.
Turned out they had a serious cardiac issue, needed immediate open heart surgery.
Wow. Okay, that's hard to just dismiss.
Right. And it's not just diagnosis. They've used ear acupuncture for treatment, too. One study showed it helped wean narcotic addicts off drugs 12 out of 14 patients in about 5 days, supposedly with minimal withdrawal just by stimulating points on the ear.
Incredible. Okay, so if space, mind, body, they're all connected in this holographic way, challenging location, what about time? Does time also get weird in this model?
It seems to. If the universe is holographic, then maybe the past isn't really gone. It's just enfolded, still present in the implicate order, potentially accessible.
You mean like retrocognition, seeing the past?
Exactly. There are documented cases, like the Polish psychic Osiewiecki. He could apparently hold an ancient object, like a tool.
Psychometry.
Right, psychometry. And he'd describe Stone Age people using specific kinds of oil lamps, their burial customs, things that archaeologists only confirmed years later.
Huh. Any more recent examples?
Yeah, there was a Canadian anthropologist, Norman Emerson, apparently a real skeptic initially. He worked with a psychic, George McMullen, who walked over a field and pointed out the exact location of an ancient Iroquois longhouse.
Just by walking around?
Yeah. 6 months later, they dug right there and bam, found the post patterns exactly where McMullen said.
Wait.
Emerson was completely convinced, called it a whole new vista.
Okay, so time might be more flexible. And this connects to things like near-death experiences, right? NDEs.
Absolutely. If consciousness isn't strictly locked inside the brain, then experiences people report having when their brain is, offline during surgery or cardiac arrest, they suddenly make more sense within this framework. And what's striking is how similar NDE accounts are across cultures and throughout history. The Life Review, for example, it's mentioned in ancient texts like the Tibetan and Egyptian books of the dead. Plato wrote about it, even yogic texts from India thousands of years ago.
But the standard explanation is usually, hallucination, brain shutting down, lack of oxygen, that kind of thing.
That's the common dismissal, yes. But it struggles to explain cases where NDers report specific verifiable details they couldn't possibly have known through normal senses.
Like what?
Like one case Talbot mentions, a woman having surgery who reported floating out of her body, going to the waiting room, and seeing her daughter wearing mismatched plaid clothes. Later, it was confirmed the maid had dressed her that day and messed it up. She couldn't have seen that from the operating table.
No way.
Or another one, someone who heard their brother-in-law in the hospital lobby making cynical plans for her funeral while she was supposedly unconscious or even clinically dead. She later confronted him with the exact detail.
Okay, those verified observations, they really challenge the hallucination theory.
They certainly make you think twice. So you put all this together, the physics, the mind, the body, time, these NDEs, where does it lead?
Yeah, what's the final picture?
The final step really is considering reality itself as potentially a collective construct. If the universe is fundamentally holographic, maybe what we experience as solid reality is more like a shared projection.
A projection created by us collectively, like our thoughts and beliefs actually shape the world.
It's a radical idea, but yeah. The sources suggest that maybe anomalous things like UFO sightings, perhaps they're not just external intelligences, but could also be holographic projections from our own collective unconscious, our myths, our folklore, literally taking form.
Whoa, like mass projections.
Possibly. Think about historical accounts like Constantine and his entire army reportedly seeing a giant flaming cross in the sky before a major battle.
Right, the in hoc signo vinces moment.
Exactly. Some interpret that not as a literal sign from God, but as a massive psychic exteriorization, the army's intense fear and hope literally projecting onto the sky.
And there was that World War I example, too, the Angels of Maud.
Yes. Hundreds of British soldiers in retreat, utterly desperate, reported seeing St. George and angelic warriors in the sky intervening. Again, was it divine intervention or a collective projection born from extreme stress and shared belief?
Or maybe both.
That's the really interesting part. In a holographic view, these explanations aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
A psychic projection could be triggered or guided by some other form of intelligence interacting with our collective mind. The lines between inner and outer just get incredibly blurry.
Man, we've gone from particles with no size to thoughts like storms, healing through the air, seeing the past, even armies projecting angels. This holographic model, based on the work synthesized in the source material, it really does suggest a fundamental shift in how we see everything.
It really turns things inside out. It forces a complete reevaluation of non-locality and interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And it leaves us with some profound questions. The book mentions a really strange event, the umbrella incident, which seemed to involve a spontaneous, almost magical change to an object. It made the author wonder, okay, reality seems stable for most of us most of the time, but is it fundamentally stable for everyone all the time? What does it take? What kind of energy or focus of consciousness to actually cause those glitches, those moments where the rules of our everyday reality seem to bend or break? That's something to really chew on.
Definitely something to think about. Keep questioning that reality framework. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive, and we'll catch you next time.